Welcome to the node.js Diagnostic Working Group meeting in June 30th, 2021. We'll follow the agenda that is prescribed in issue number 481. To start with, are there any announcements? I take it as a no. So the first one.
There is a person that is joined as an attendee. Maybe we can promote them as a panelist.
I think
it's Michael with the same
Michael.
account.
Yeah. Michael comes with Node.js Foundation account, and I had issues in the past promoting that account. Let me see what is there on the chat. I may have to drop and join us now. Yes. Yes, please. Okay, he's going to come back. So to start with, 444 improve the V8 profiler performance. I guess this is added by Rafael.
Yeah. Initially, this issue was created because we closed at the node CPU profiling roadmap, and from past discoveries, we figured out that when we have a lot of functions on the heap, the profile start and profile stop takes a long time, mainly because of CPU utilization start profiling. CPU profiling, and this is harmful to production environments. However, I actually in the last 3 days I have tried some benchmarks. I have read the entire conversation, the entire issue, and I have tried a benchmark to check how this takes, and actually it is not taking a long time anymore in versions node 14 and above. So
there's
looks like
pretty,
it was
substantial performance improvement at node 14 and another bit of a jump at 16. There's still more that can be done with it, but yeah.
Yeah, so looks like that it was fixed in the V8, and I'm not sure if there are more things to do in this issue. So I just added the flag to talk here and discuss if we should keep the eyes on it, or we can close, or even check if the benchmark, the test was correctly. Firstly, sorry.
The question I had is you ran that same benchmark on an earlier version like 12, and you see it take longer than you see it running on 14?
Yeah, exactly. I post the results here. For instance, in the V10, the start takes around of 600 milliseconds, and in the V14 it takes only 58 milliseconds. So it's a huge impact. But we had some case that when we had around of 50,000 functions, 50,000 functions in the heap, the profile start were taking around of 5 seconds to start, but it didn't happen with me. I'm not sure why, but looks like it was fixed in the V8. I also link a comment from Gerhard that made this the same test some in April of the last year.
The V16 shows enable taking a lot longer. Is that?
Yeah, this is interesting.
I
I'm
assume
not
you
sure
ran
why.
these a number of times, right?
Yeah, exactly. And the result was consistent.
I'm just looking at the code, and essentially looks like this loop is run 1 million times.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and these numbers on the face of it, these numbers look impressive to me. I mean, for any commercial application, if you're doing the profiling.
Yeah, in the last benchmark from Gerhard, when we have around of 1 million functions, the start was taking more than 1 second, but in my test is not taking anymore. So
Right, it's 10 times faster from.
So should we deem it as a good one and call it as resolved?
yeah, I think so.
Is the longer enable a concern at all?
Yeah, the enable is an interesting point. However, I feel that we have the cloud profile node.js from Google APIs have a similar issue, but I'm not sure if it is around of profile.start. The issue is from the last year as well, when all the discussions come to bring to discussions. I think that I should post a comment there to check again if this is still happen. If not, probably was fixed by V18 in some non-related issue.
I guess I'm looking at it now too. It's like milliseconds, so it's not a
Yeah.
long amount of time either way. So actually, maybe that doesn't matter. I was thinking it was seconds, but as milliseconds, it's probably irrelevant.
Yeah.
And do you know what the enable actually does? Because it's not actually part of the native API.
I guess that
background thread for it or something.
I guess that the enable is just the bind at runtime for the .prof or something like that.
I'm curious what that actually does. Yeah.
It may be the thing that because you can start and stop multiple times, right?
Yeah.
The enable is probably just like, hey, I want to actually turn this on, and if you don't turn it on, it hasn't done whatever plumbing or whatever that you need for to be able to start.
I'm also looking into the possibility of making a different profiler interface that just gives you pprof data, which hopefully we can actually expose more directly, so you don't have to go through the inspector at all, because there's actually a whole bunch of extra costs to going through the inspector.
Sorry, did you say tprof data?
Pprof.
Pprof, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so pprof is used in Golang and a bunch of other places.
Okay.
But it's like a protobuf serialized data, basically.
Okay.
So the idea was just to have like an API that just gives you a buffer. And so like currently, like the inspector profiler, like it serializes all of the C++ objects into JavaScript objects, which like it's a whole tree of stuff. There's a lot of expense to doing
Right.
that.
Yeah.
And it does this in like the inspector thread and then sends it over WebSockets back to the main thread,
Right.
which requires serializing that to JSON, which is more expensive, and then deserializing it again when you receive it. And
Right.
it's like all these extra unnecessary conversion steps. Yeah, so I want to just go like straight to just make it pprof data and spit that out, and you can do what you want with it from there.
Okay, but it sounds like the question on this one is like, it sounds like it's resolved in terms of the original issue, and if there was anything more to do, new issues would make sense. Is that what people are thinking after Raphael's investigation?
Yeah, I just checking all the past conversation, but looks like yeah, was magical fixed by some other commit in the V8. I thought that could be related to this one that I will send in the chat, but it was abandoned, but could be done in another PR.
Sorry, I missed that point. What is the action we suggested here? What is the next action?
I think that we can close this one, and if someone has some effects from this, we check again.
Okay.
That makes sense to me.
Yeah. Just tracing back a little, was it internally reported, or was there an end user who said who reported this performance problem?
Actually, I don't have any client facing this problem. I think this is more from profilers and something related that was taking a long time in production to profiling at runtime. But I don't see any other issues regarding that.
Okay. Yeah, I don't remember on top of my mind an issue in the help repo or some discussion elsewhere on this. So I think the decision call looks good. Right now, let's call it resolved. And if there is an issue reported from the users, we can revisit this always. All right. Moving on
Sure.
to the next item, which is identify async hooks use case beyond async local storage, number 437. Stephen.
Yeah, so I put together a blog post for that. Chat. Yep. Yeah, there's some content there to to put in a blog post, we might want to do some like editing or something first.
Is it okay if I put that link in the minutes?
Yeah.
Okay, just other people may get to it, so okay, I'll put it. Just wanted to check.
Yeah, that's like first pass of content for that. So yeah, we can reword that as needed and put that up on the blog and get some attention to it. So we can hopefully get some user feedback on what we could be doing that we're not already doing.
I'm just reading through. Since we don't have a lot on our agenda, we can see if everybody kind of thinks this looks good and maybe move it to the next step, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, looks good to me.
What was these paragraphs? It can also be helpful, and additionally, are those tied to the another known use case of the longer stack traces, or they stand on their own?
Was it another known use case? So, sorry, what exactly?
So sorry, like that there's the paragraph that says another known use cases that's not currently served by async local storage is long stack traces. So I get that. The next two paragraphs, what I'm not quite sure is if those are trying to follow on like it. What is it? Is it long stack traces or something else?
I think just like async hooks in general.
Okay.
Yeah, like tracking lifecycle of requests and handles. Like the requests part is maybe a little ambiguous with async local storage, but yeah, tracking like handles and sockets, like you kind of need access to those like you get from using async hooks directly. Or like at
Right.
least have the like type field to tell you what it is.
Okay. It might be useful to convert that to like a bulleted list, which is like other known use cases which are not served by async local storage include long stack traces, measuring the time. That would have flowed more naturally for me, at least, if those were like 3 bullet points under that one thought.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I think that's basically repeating what's in the issue, which is bullet point formatted. So yeah, can restructure that.
Okay.
I'm fine with this. Just thinking aloud, if APMs can make use of async hooks in some manner, and if yes, should those use cases be listed over here above on top of what is listed, or instead of some of these low level capabilities which end user may find it little difficult to relate? I'm just thinking aloud.
Sorry, I didn't catch that very well.
So the long stack trace is quite easy to relate for an end user, whereas using to measure time in blocking code between before and after events, how does it really translate to a application level misbehavior or a diagnostic user journey? Will it be in terms of a performance bottleneck or hang? I'm just trying to relate it to the application level.
I mean, like it could be any number of those, but like even like not necessarily something is standing out, but just like seeing like the numbers are showing that this could maybe be better. It's like you might have like a high traffic server that you're getting like tens of thousands of requests per second, and like it handles it okay, but you wish you could get like a bit better like just like request latency or something like that. And like looking at the blocking time and tell you like, oh yeah, I'm spending a fair bit of time in this like blocking code. Maybe I can put that in like a worker thread or something.
Okay.
In this case, do we want people to say, oh yeah, I want to do that? Or do we really want feedback that says, this is how I'm using them? Like if we basically said we're deprecating async hooks, we want to know if people would be like, hey, wait a second. But if there's like potential use cases that nobody are using them for, we may not mind as much, right?
Yeah, so the goal here is less to like find like, are you using it for these things we've already thought of?
Right.
It's more what is not in this list.
Right. Okay. So maybe instead of being, it's, you know, saying there are other known use cases, but like, you know, maybe it's like we should say something like we already have on our list to look for other ways to allow you to do this, this, and this without async hooks.
Yeah.
And then it's kind of like, are there any other things that you use them for that, you know, so yeah, that's really the fundamental question. Are you using async hooks for anything else?
Yeah.
Because kind of like that last question, like if you have any general feedback on the usability, like if people say, well, I find it hard to use, since we really were thinking about like what else could we do instead, I'm not sure that's as useful to us as, hey, I use them to do X. So don't get rid of them without the replacement, right?
Yeah.
So it might be worth just ending on the, you know, if you have use cases which are not covered by the async local storage or these other ones we have in the list, please let us know, because, you know, we want to make sure that we come up with alternatives before. Yeah, I don't know how to write that off the top of my head, but basically we kind of want to say, let us know if you're doing something so that if we're going to get rid of async hooks, we've got an alternative for it.
Yeah.
Without necessarily wanting to ignite the we're going to get rid of it discussion or whatever, but like if hint at that, right?
Yeah. I guess it's also two purposes. One is to show the list of known use cases or the use cases that we have envisioned, and some of the users are not aware of it, and they just got to know, okay, these are the cases where we can use it. So that way it becomes useful for them. And on the other hand, we could get to know what are the other ways in which users are using it.
Yeah, maybe like that list is like, maybe it's like our plan. We could say something like our plan is to try and develop other APIs which will let you, which will cover the async hook use cases, and which have a better chance of becoming stable, which follows from your previous paragraph. These are the ones that we have in our list. And then, what we're looking for is your feedback on things which we've missed in terms of that.
Yeah.
And I guess it's like, if I don't think we need to wait till the next meeting. Like, I think you've got something pretty close. Sounds like with a few tweaks, you'd be ready to go. I don't know if you want to just edit it and then send it on to get it published, or you want people to take another look, or.
Yeah, I could just post it in like issue on the diagnostics repo, and people can provide feedback there.
Yeah, that sounds good. Because I think if we do that and then hopefully get it out, doesn't need to wait anyway for us to get back together for sure.
Yeah. And related to this, I'm wondering about the idea of like following from this, like docs deprecating async hooks, and like just have the intention that like it may just sit that way for like many versions, but just like use it as like sending a message to users that we don't like this thing, like at the least come complain to us loudly about us like wanting to deprecate it.
I think we'd want to do some like Mateo, for example. I think we'd want to connect with him and see what he thinks of that, because I know he's been a strong like, hey, we use this, we can't get rid of them.
Yeah.
So we'd want to make sure that a few people like him and James are on side in terms of like, hey, here's the plan. The doc deprecation isn't a, the plan is we'd like to create other APIs, eventually deprecate it. Are people comfortable with that step now as a signal or not? And getting their feedback, I think, would help us see if we're close to them saying, okay, or well, no, we can't do that.
Yeah. It's like we're already like experimental status anyway. So like to me, like those are about equivalent. Don't use this statuses. So.
Yeah, one's a little different. Like one is like it's experimental, but in theory, it will become non-experimental at some point. What we're really kind of saying is we don't think we're ever going to take this out of experimental.
Yeah.
And I guess the doc deprecation does that actually trigger? I'm forgetting whether you can run like a command line option that will tell you about doc deprecations or anything. Like I'm just what I'm exploring is like, is there any benefit to actually doc deprecating versus in the docs basically saying this is experimental and we don't necessarily expect it to exit experimental.
Yeah, just so like definitely having some more clear wording around that, because yeah, currently like you said, like anything that's experimental, it's kind of like suggesting that
at
some point it'll be not experimental, but our current docs have like make no suggestion that like async hooks is not looking like something that could ever come out of experimental. Like that's does not communicate at all.
Like we could propose adding a section to the docs that outlines the plan. The current plan is to build alternate APIs, for example, async local storage, progress those to stable, and based on that plan, async hooks as an API is unlikely to exit the experimental status. That might be the way to go to outline the plan. So if we wrote that down, we could pass that by, again, like I think still getting the input from like Mateo as a first step to say, you know, would you be okay with adding this to the docs? And if we sort of test it out with a few people who've shown the most concern over async hooks, then we could go to the TSC and say, hey, this is what we'd like to propose. And, you know, hopefully if it's like, this is the plan and this is the plan people are working to, it's good to share that plan, right?
Yeah, sounds good. Yeah, I can have a chat with them and see what their thoughts are on it.
Okay. Sounds good. If you want to pull me in, feel free otherwise, but no, but just an offer, not an ask necessarily.
Yeah. If anything else on our agenda, doesn't look like it.
I think that's it. Yeah.
Yeah, I have don't know how helpful anyone will be on this, but I just pasted in the chat. I have a PR that's a little bit in progress still to change. So I did the context promise hook stuff, and that changes when you're using async hooks without a destroy hook, it'll use the faster context hook. But if you have a destroy hook, it still falls back to the old way. So this is removing that, and the destroy hook would then just be using the same registered destroy hook function that async resource uses. So it would, like, all of promise hook, or like all of that would be like pure JavaScript side. There's like two major concerns right now. One of them is there's a test for inside of VM, like it was deleting promise domain at one point. It seems like that code actually like disappeared at some point, but somehow that continued to be not there in VM. I think it was just a matter of it not being set properly rather than it being removed. I haven't quite figured out how it is like not in master and reappearing here, but yeah, I'm working on trying to figure out how that makes sense. And the other point was trace events don't trigger currently in here. And so wondering about like exposing JavaScript API for that and what that should look like.
And why the trace event? Like, how does it's because the trace events were generated from the C code, right?
Yeah, so in C++, in the fast promise hook, or no, full promise hook function, there's like trace event scope there, and it triggers the like before and after events. And yes, a init gets triggered from like inside of the async wrap somewhere. With this change, promises will no longer be wrapped with an async wrap. So like none of that actually happens at the moment. We can reproduce basically that behavior if we like expose the logic for triggering those into JavaScript somehow. It's a bit unclear like how we want to do that and how much that matters. Yeah, I believe when I made the original context promise hook, there was some slight concerns from James about that not being exposed anymore.
Mhm.
But he seemed fine with it at the time because with the destroy hook, it was still there, so you could just add the destroy hook to make it
Right.
happen. But with this change, that would no longer be possible.
And the benefit is that it's going to be faster, cleaner.
Yeah, so that this code performance is like about equivalent to doing it as a native hook, maybe slightly faster. It's more so just like a big simplification of the code. It just has like one path to go through for everything, whereas with it having like two different sets of like promise hook logic, I actually like discovered that like our code coverage actually like was broken in certain spots because like it went one path and not the other.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, just having one set of logic would be a lot better, I think. And like just simplifying that code, I think it makes it a lot easier to contribute to as well.
Yeah, I know we talked, I can't remember off the top of my head, but I certainly know we talked about being able to generate trace events from JavaScript, the JavaScript side, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm pretty sure I've seen mentions of that, but I don't know like whatever happened with that. If that's still a thing that we want to do and just hasn't been prioritized, or what, like where that's at. Um, I assume James is probably the one to talk to about that. So
I mean, it sounds like if he was concerned, he may have a hard use case, which is the best way to validate. So yeah, makes
yeah,
sense.
yeah, I believe Node Clinic uses the trace events from promises for something.
Right.
I don't really know the details though.
And it's generally good to be able to trace things like that too. So
Yeah. Yeah. So like I definitely see the value in having that. Like I think we probably should try to keep that behavior.
mhm.
It's just unclear how to do that right now. Like what, like where the efforts to have a JavaScript API got, if anywhere.
Yeah, I think it's a matter of looking at the history and figuring out. Do we have in our docs, do we have anything? Node. Okay. I guess I'm looking in the API. I don't see anything that actually talks about generating the trace events. It talks about turning them on, but I guess that kind of makes sense as an external API.
Yeah, as far as I know, there's no JavaScript APIs. to actually like create events currently.
Right, because that kind of limits us to we can only trace things that are on the native side.
Yeah.
Now, I guess that could be pretty expensive though if you add trace events, because like as you cross the, if you have to do a native boundary cross.
Yeah. Yeah, my thinking is so like currently for promise hooks I have like I've split it up into like there's separate functions for like init, before, after, resolve, and then I've also separated it so like if you have a destroy hook, there's a different init hook that like registers the destroy hook. So like I'd just be adding like a bit more complexity to that. There's just like another function that, like if you have trace hook like trace events turned on, then use this extra thing that has some extra cost of like C++ boundary cross.
Right. I mean, I guess you can always like basically have native code which will emit those trace events, and you, this sounds like it'd be horribly inefficient though, is like you could actually call a method to say, you know, the before and after, like, because there were 2 trace events, was it, or more than 2? More than 2?
I think 3.
Right. Or even 3. I mean, you could write C code which you would call when you want to emit those. That would just be very inefficient, right? I just don't know if there's a faster, like building a framework which would end up being generally faster than that would be pretty complicated though, I assume. Or not trivial anyway.
Yeah. Well, there is a fast function API for V8 that we can probably use that. I don't know that we have to pass much through necessarily, or at least we don't necessarily have to pass it directly.
Right.
So,
okay, yeah, that's an interesting, yeah, if that makes it fast enough, maybe that's worth exploring.
yeah. Like async hooks, we're already doing a bunch of like weird passing stuff around through like shared arrays and stuff like that. So could probably do the same for whatever we'd pass into a function to trigger trace event stuff.
Okay. Certainly, like, yeah, it sounds like getting some feedback from James would be good, because, you know, maybe if he says, oh no, really doesn't matter, but otherwise it does sound like you were saying, something we probably want to preserve. And if you have time to look at how whether the fast functions might make it fast enough, that sounds good.
Yeah.
And if that turns into like a generic solution, that's even better, right? Like,
yeah, that was like the other point I was unsure about, like if we should make something that is like generically useful, or if we should just like have some internal thing to trigger the like async wrap stuff specifically for this.
like, my personal perspective is that might be a reasonable step along the way, right? Like if,
yeah,
you know, if you did something internal that was specific just to this, but it, you know, it's the first step in learning what that generic one might be, it seems fair not to put the burden of building a new generic API on one feature, right? Or one bit of change.
Yeah. I'll discuss this with James. I think he'll have some good thoughts on it.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks. Anything else on this? Anybody else?
I think that's probably it. And I have a backport of the context promise up to v14, which hopefully we can get that out there at some point whenever there's another v14 release. Yeah, other than that, I don't think there's too much else going on. Camera's overheating.
Nope.
All right. Was there a
Okay.
question to me? I guess no, right?
No, I don't think
Oh,
so. I think we're
Okay.
ready to, if that's it.
Yeah.
We're ready to close out.
Thanks everybody for joining. Talk to you in 2 weeks time.
Bye.
Thanks.
Bye.
See ya.